Hey guys, tonight we're going back to the medieval world. Not the sword-clashing, mud-splattered part you're probably picturing, but a quieter, fluffier corner. You're waking up in your own manner, beneath a canopy of imported velvet, in a bed stuffed with goose down, so fine it was once weighed against coins. The light is still soft, filtered through linen curtains embroidered with little falcons. You inhale deeply and frown. Something's missing. That whisper of rose and clove that used to greet your nostrils every morning, gone, evaporated into history. You lift your head, blink slowly, and yes, confirmed. Your pillow no longer smells rich. You, dear listener, are a medieval millionaire, possibly the wealthiest merchant in your town, maybe even in the duchy. You've got land, influence, the best cooks, and a chamber pot made of tin alloy with little carved horses on the rim. And yet, you've awoken into crisis. Not war, not famine, but something arguably worse. Your pillow perfume has worn off. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm curious which corners of the world are drifting off with this nonsense. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch beneath the covers, listening to the distant cluck of hens being fed in the courtyard. A rooster, yours obviously, screeches with the kind of confidence that only an unthreatened bird can muster. You sigh. Another day in paradise, but one that now smells faintly of musty linen and disappointment. You shuffle to the edge of the mattress, your feet finding the sheepskin slippers placed there by a sleepy servant. The floor is cold, even through the wool. Another small injustice. You rise, stretch again. Your back does a dramatic crack. Remember, this is the 1300s. You've lived through at least one siege. And you shuffle to the polished mirror gifted to you by a Venetian glass merchant who owed you money and preferred bartering over coin. Your hair is unkempt, your eyes slightly bleary, but your robes, those are impeccable. Deep blue, dyed with woad, and trimmed with gold thread acquired, from a Frankish tapestry. You ring a little bronze bell, because yelling is for peasants, and moments later, your steward enters. His name is Alwyn. He's been with your family for 2 decades and has the unique talent of bowing without ever truly bending. Alwyn, you murmur, voice still wrapped in sleep. The pillow no longer smells like anything. He freezes. He's heard rumors, of course, of barons who've been overthrown for less. I will prepare the coin chest, he replies solemnly. In the world you inhabit, scent is more than luxury. It's social standing. It's identity. A perfumed pillow isn't just about comfort. It's about power. Smell too strongly and you're vulgar. Smell too faintly and people assume you've gone broke or mad. You have no intention of letting either rumor start today. Your steward brings in the household ledger, and together, you flip past entries for horse feed, firewood, flute repairs, and last week's quail egg binge. Then, at last, you land on a fresh page. Scented Pillow Initiative. You title it. You sketch a tiny rose next to the heading. Alwyn, who can't draw, pretends not to notice. How much shall we allocate? He asks. You tap your chin with a gloved finger. 30 basins, you say, with all the theatrical flair of a monarch declaring war. He flinches. 30? That's enough to buy 3 new hounds, or a season's worth of lamp oil. Historians still argue whether medieval elites actually spent this kind of coin on fragrance, But given what we know about medieval extravagance, it's not entirely out of the question. One duchess allegedly used crushed pearls in her bathwater. Another had servants who did nothing all day but fan her soup. In that context, Pillow Perfume feels sensible. Alwyn nods, scribbles the amount into the ledger, and stamps the page with your seal. A ferret holding a spoon. It's a long story. The morning begins in earnest. Outside, church bells toll 8 times. Not that you believe it's really 8 o'clock. Timekeeping, in your era, is more of an interpretive art. Bells, shadows, and rooster moods are all consulted. Your goal for the day is now clear. Procure a new fragrance for your pillow, one so delightful that minstrels might write ballads about your bedtime. But where does one even begin? You begin by dressing. And no, not just throwing on pants. You are seen every time you step outside this manor. Even if your destination is a perfumer's back room that smells like pickled goat, you must look like wealth embodied. Today's ensemble includes an underrobe of linen, a tunic dyed with crushed berries, and an overgown of imported velvet. Yes, the one with tiny brass buttons shaped like walnuts, a belt with silver studs, a hat that looks like a bread bowl, because that's the current style. You adjust your rings, adding the one with the green stone that allegedly repels gossip. It doesn't, but people pretend it does, which is half the fun. Breakfast is served in the solar, your favorite sunlit room. On the menu, honeyed barley gruel, sliced pears poached in wine, and a small loaf of almond bread shaped like a swan. The cook has gone overboard again. You make a mental note to compliment her. After all, loyalty is delicious. While you eat, 2 of your household attendants debate which scents are currently in. One swears by crushed violets. The other insists that cardamom oil is making a comeback in noble courts. You chew, you nod, you pretend to care. But in truth, your heart is set. You want rose. Not the watered-down stuff that everyone else has, but something rare, potent, maybe even mythic. By the time you finish your bread swan, the path ahead is clear. Find the perfumer, barter for the best, and restore your pillow to its former olfactory glory. The coins are ready, 30 of them to be precise. Thick, shining bezants stamped with the emperor's bored-looking face. Each one holds the weight of a minor miracle. This is not your average daily spending. This is statement money. This is, I want to smell like I summer in Byzantium money. Alwyn has laid them out neatly in a velvet pouch lined with rabbit fur. You lift the pouch. It's heavier than you expect. The kind of weight that, if you were a more dramatic soul, might make you pause and reconsider your pillow priorities. But no, you're committed. If history is going to judge you, let it do so through the faint floral haze of rose attar and dignity. The steward gives you a sideways look. Are you certain, my lord, that 30 is not excessive? You arch an eyebrow. If I wanted to smell like a sheep pen, I'd lie in one. He wisely says nothing further. You head to your study to check the town's merchant schedule. It's more of a rumor chart than a true record. Your clerk keeps it updated with notes like, spice boat delayed by fog, or that perfumer still owes tax, might be hiding. Still, it gives you an idea. Today, a merchant barge is due upriver from the south, possibly carrying rare aromatics from Damascus or even Baghdad. You nod to yourself. This is the moment. You secure the coin pouch inside your tunic, sling on your outer cloak, and prepare to descend the stairs. One servant rushes ahead to announce your outing to the household. Another fetches your boots, the soft ones lined with otter fur, because blisters are for the unlanded. Outside, the town is stretching awake. Chickens scatter as your feet hit the muddy street. A piglet grunts its disapproval from someone's doorway. In the distance, a bell rings with the enthusiasm of someone trying to wake a lazy saint. The morning fog is already beginning to lift, and the smell of fresh bread mingles with, well, less charming odors. You pass two peasants gossiping about the weather. They stop to bow, slightly too deeply. Your cloak flutters behind you, like a moth with confidence issues. And then you make it to the riverfront. Here's where the real excitement begins. The docks are a flurry of carts, crates, arguments, and wet burlap. You weave through them like a particularly well-dressed eel, ears tuned to the chatter. You overhear one man lamenting the price of saffron, another boasting about peppercorn profits. And then, there it is, a whisper. Rose oil, from the east, sealed in pewter flasks, arrived this morning. You turn slowly. A group of porters is offloading wooden boxes stamped with a seal you recognize. 2 camels and a fig. That's the mark of the spice caravan from across the Levant. And if they've brought spices, there's a chance they've brought perfume. You approach with measured steps, the way a falcon might stroll through a barnyard. One of the traders spots you and straightens up with all the anxiety of someone who's just remembered they're behind on last year's tax. Ah, my lord, how pleasant to see you. How fortunate. Yes, yes, you murmur. Where is Hugo? He hesitates. Still sleeping, I think. He had a long night boiling orange peels. You sigh. Of course. Apothecaries are many things. Scientists, artists, part-time snake oil enthusiasts. But punctual they are not. You make your way to his shop anyway. The path there takes you through a narrow alley paved with slippery stones and the occasional discarded eel. A woman selling herbs offers you a wilted sprig of mint to sweeten your inner balance. You take it, mostly out of pity, and tuck it behind your ear. Hugo's apothecary is, as always, a study in beautiful chaos. The front of the shop is a crooked little room crammed with jars, dried roots, and scrolls no one has opened in decades. It smells like cloves, ink, and possibly regret. The shop cat blinks at you from atop a barrel labeled experimental leech solution. You knock gently on the back door. There's a crash, a muffled curse, and then the sound of someone trying to pretend they've been awake for hours. Hugo finally emerges in a stained robe and a hairnet made of very fine chicken wire. My lord, what a surprise. A pleasure. A delight. You're here early. It's almost midday, Hugo. Ah, time. A flexible concept, as always. He gestures for you to follow him inside. The deeper part of his shop is even stranger. Glass tubes, copper stills, bundles of herbs suspended from the rafters like aromatic bats. A small stove puffs steam into the air, and in the center of the room sits a box, a simple wooden crate sealed with wax. He opens it slowly. Inside, 5 pewter flasks, each nestled in straw. This, he says, is the finest rose attar I've ever seen. Harvested under a crescent moon, they say, carried across mountains, hidden from bandits, kept cool with snow wrapped in camel wool. You lift a flask. It's cool to the touch. You uncork it gently and inhale. It's glorious. Sharp at first, then soft, with a finish like sunrise in a courtyard full of lemon trees. You close your eyes. It smells like something you once dreamed, probably during a fever. How much? You ask, eyes still closed. Hugo hesitates. For you, my lord, 30 bezants. You open one eye, That's convenient, isn't it? He grins. You sigh. A fair price, perhaps even a bargain, considering the rarity. Historians still argue whether rose oil ever fetched prices this high in Western markets, but evidence suggests that by the 13th and 14th centuries, Eastern perfumers were producing concentrated attars that were more valuable by weight than gold. You nod once. Deal. He claps his hands, clearly relieved, and begins to wrap your chosen flask in cloth. Behind him, one of his apprentices drops a jar labeled mouse tears and quietly pretends it didn't happen. You tuck the flask into your cloak, secure it against your chest like a holy relic, and prepare to return home. It's a new day, and your pillow is about to become the most luxurious square of linen in the realm. You walk home with a flask of dreams pressed to your ribs. The cobbled streets are warmer now, busy with the midday hum of merchants and misbehaving poultry. Your boots squish slightly in mud that smells like goat and garlic, but you barely notice. You're too busy imagining the moment your head sinks into a pillow that smells like poetry, like roses crushed between angel fingers, like the kind of spring morning bards cry about. You're so lost in thought that you almost don't notice the boy. He's maybe 12, maybe 9. It's hard to tell in an era where nutrition is more suggestion than science. He darts out of an alley, looks both ways, and then collides directly with your shins. There's a brief tangle of limbs, yelps, and startled pigeons before you stagger backward, clutching your cloak. The flask. You pat your chest. Still there. Thank the saints. The boy, who now looks mildly horrified, blurts, "Sorry, my lord," and scurries off with the urgency of someone who's either late or up to something, possibly both. You dust yourself off with what remains of your dignity and continue. Back at the manor, Alwyn meets you at the door. "Success?" he asks, eyeing your slightly ruffled hat. You nod, and, with the solemnity of a knight revealing a sacred relic, extract the pewter flask from your cloak. Alwyn lifts his brows. "Elegant," he says, which in steward speak means, "Thank goodness it isn't covered in frogs." You retire to your chambers. The pillow lies in wait, innocent and unsuspecting. You hold the flask up to the light. Pewter doesn't shine, but it hums with a kind of weighty promise. You open it again, just to remind yourself. The scent hits you like a memory, soft, lingering, utterly unnecessary. It's perfect. Now comes the tricky part. Application. See, medieval perfumery isn't exactly a science. It's more of a vibe. Some people dab oil directly onto fabric. Others dilute it in warmed wine or vinegar before spraying it with a hollowed-out reed. A few ambitious souls attempt what we'll kindly call pillow marination, which involves soaking the fabric overnight. You tried that once. The pillow turned into mush and smelled like fermented salad, so you go with the gentle approach. You pour a few drops, just enough to glisten, into a small ceramic bowl. Then you dip a scrap of fine linen into the oil and press it delicately to the corners of your pillow, humming to yourself as if engaged in sacred ritual. The linen absorbs the scent greedily, and you blot, dab, and stroke until the whole pillow gives off the faint, mysterious aroma of wealth with a sensitive side. It's glorious. You inhale deeply. And then, of course, someone knocks. You flinch hard enough to send the ceramic bowl skittering under your bed. It's Alwyn again. "My lord," he says delicately. "A visitor." You blink. "Who?" "A certain Lady Cecily. She says she's come to return your goat." There's a long pause while you try to remember whether you've misplaced a goat. Entirely possible. You once accidentally traded a cow for a lute during a spring feast. I'll receive her in the East Solar, you mutter. The East Solar is your favorite room for 2 reasons. 1, it catches the morning light like spun gold. And 2, it's the furthest from the kitchens, which means fewer interruptions from a cook who enjoys experimenting with pickled eel. Lady Cecily is already waiting when you arrive. She's leaning against the window in a posture that screams scandalous levels of confidence. Her gown is red, her gloves are black, her expression is smug. "You've dropped something," she says. She holds up a small cloth sachet. You squint. It's yours. Well, not yours exactly, but it's definitely the sample packet of rose oil you carried last week during the guild dinner. The one you used to impress that minor bishop who kept talking about cheese. Cecily tosses it onto a cushion and sits down without asking. "I smelled something," she says casually, "and thought of you." You chuckle. Not because it's funny, but because Cecily is the kind of person who could sell honey to bees. She also once hosted a tournament where the grand prize was a very impressive spoon. Her sense of luxury borders on chaotic neutral. "Have you been spying on my pillow?" you ask. She grins. "Always." You chat for a while, about guild politics, which monks are writing rude plays again, and whether pickled apples are the future of dessert. But your thoughts keep drifting back to the flask upstairs, to the pillow, to the possibility that right now the scent is fading with every passing moment. Cecily eventually rises. "Well," she says, "I shall leave you to your scented solitude." You escort her out, and she pauses in the doorway. "Oh," she adds, "I may have told Hugo you were looking for more perfume. He sent word to someone in Bruges." You blink. "Why?" She smirks. "Because, darling, if you're going to be ridiculous about a pillow, you might as well be legendary about it." And with that, she's gone. You close the door, lean against it, and exhale. More perfume? From Bruges? That's dangerously close to escalation. Still, Bruges does have access to some truly rare botanicals. And if you're going to spend your nights buried in rose-scented dreams, why not have options? You trudge back upstairs, passing a maid polishing the stair rail with vinegar and thyme. "For luck," she says. You nod approvingly. Hygiene and superstition are best practiced together. Back in your chamber, the scent has settled into the air like a lullaby. You stretch out on the bed, fully clothed, and sink your face into the pillow. And there it is, comfort, triumph, silly, luxurious joy. Historians still argue whether personal comfort was truly valued among medieval elites, or if it was more about outward display. But in this moment, with your nose pressed to rose-scented linen, you're pretty sure it's both. Your pillow now smells like the garden of a saint. But of course, being a medieval millionaire, the experience can't stop at just one exquisitely scented nap zone. No. You've invested 30 gold coins in this endeavor, and like any responsible noble with a slight flair for drama, you intend to maximize the value, which means experimentation. First order of business, testing the fragrance in different settings. You begin with the library. Now, your library isn't the sprawling, marble-floored wonder of a Florentine duke, but it's respectable. 5 solid shelves, a few chained manuscripts, a suspiciously sticky herbal compendium no one wants to claim. There's a window seat that catches afternoon light, and more importantly, it's one of the few rooms in your manor where nobody's allowed to shout unless something is genuinely on fire. You carry the pillow in with reverence, like a sacred artifact. You place it on the seat, take a deep breath, and lower yourself slowly. Then you lean back, close your eyes, and let the perfume work its magic. And, yes, it transforms the room. The scent mingles with vellum and dust and beeswax, and suddenly you're not just a noble reclining after lunch. You're a philosopher-poet contemplating the mysteries of love and onions. The pillow enhances the ambiance so thoroughly, you half expect a lute player to materialize behind the drapes. A servant peeks in. You wave him away with a sleepy finger. After 20 blissful minutes of absolutely no productivity, you decide it's time to explore other scenarios. Next up, the chapel. You're not trying to be irreverent, but if one is going to feel truly transported by scent, why not try it in the one room meant for transcendence? You discreetly ferry the pillow into a pew near the back, one that doesn't creak, and settle in for what you generously call private devotion. The incense already lingering in the air is heavy with frankincense, resinous and ancient. The rose oil floats above it gently, like a whisper tucked between choir notes. It's almost too pleasant. You nod off after 5 minutes. You wake to the sound of the priest clearing his throat very deliberately. You smile, apologize, and mention something vague about contemplative ecstasy. He does not look convinced. You return to your chambers to consider the next test phase, travel. Travel pillows are, historically, a tragic affair. Mostly just folded cloaks, rolled hay, or the odd sack of millet. You, however, are determined to elevate the standard. So you send for your coachman and tell him to prepare the carriage for a test ride. A short loop around the estate, you say, and bring the smooth-mannered mule, the lumpy one. The carriage is jolty, as expected. The roads are paved with ambition more than actual stones. Still, you nestle the pillow behind your head and lean back as the wheels thump along. It's absurd. It's wonderful. You're bouncing like a cork in a bucket, but your head smells like poetry and cleanliness. You even pass one of your field hands, who does a double take and mutters, "Well, that's a lord who naps with style." You smile benevolently and wave. Back home, your steward intercepts you before you can sneak the pillow upstairs again. "My lord," Alwyn says, "you received correspondence." He holds out a scroll sealed with wax. The symbol is unfamiliar. 3 flowers entwined around a star. You crack the seal and read. It's from Bruges. Specifically, a merchant named Master Anselm, apparently informed by your dear friend Lady Cecily of your unique olfactory pursuits. He writes with an offer, a shipment of imported night-blooming jasmine oil, once used by Moorish scholars to scent their study cushions. Also, something called musk of civet, which he describes as robust and vigorous. You frown slightly. Vigorous is not a word you usually associate with sleep. Still, you admit it. You're intrigued. Historians still debate how far medieval scent culture extended beyond the elite. While common folk rubbed herbs on their tunics or burned juniper for fumigation, nobles sometimes commissioned custom scent blends, believed to ward off miasma, encourage dreams, or, depending on the priest, provoke sin. You write back immediately, "Dear Master Anselm, do send a sample of the jasmine. As for the civet, perhaps not near pillows. Respectfully, etc." You tuck the scroll away and glance toward your chambers. Time for a final test. The nap. Not a full sleep, just a mid-afternoon descent into gentle, rose-scented oblivion. You loosen your belt, remove your boots, very carefully, last time your maid found a snail, and lie down. The scent envelops you, not harsh, not sweet, just elegant. A drifting garden at dusk. You dream, briefly, of floating over Damascus on a cloud of silk. Then someone knocks. Again. This time it's your cousin Gerald, with his usual aura of cheerful chaos and a belt full of spoons. "Smells funny in here," he says. You blink at him. "It's my pillow," you reply. "Right. Anyway, there's a man outside selling scented wax birds. Says they fly if you heat them with a candle." You sigh. "Of course he does." Gerald grins. "Wanna buy 5? You sigh again, deeper this time. There's always someone trying to reinvent sleep. Later that evening, while Gerald is loudly attempting to roast a wax bird over your hearth, just needs more flame. You retreat back to your pillow, like it's a lover waiting with warm soup and a good book. You bury your face in the linen and inhale. Still glorious, still soft, still deeply satisfying in a way that can only be described as defiantly unproductive. But, true to your noble calling, you're not content to simply enjoy the perfume. Number. You want to understand it. And to do that, you'll need to talk to the one person in your household who actually knows what goes into this bottled sorcery. The apothecary. Master Haverford, your resident apothecary, resides in a cottage that smells like burnt licorice and damp owl feathers. He's perpetually hunched over one bubbling thing or another, and has what you'd politely call a complex relationship with fire. You find him feeding dried poppy to a rabbit when you arrive. "Ah," he says. Lord Pillownose returns. You've earned the nickname, it seems. "I have questions," you say, holding up the pewter flask. "About this." He peers at it, squints, then sniffs the air like a fox. "Rose," he says, with bass notes of myrrh, possibly marjoram, bit of clove too. You blink. That's accurate. "I distilled something similar once," he adds, rummaging through a crate labeled "herbs probably not poison," though mine involved duck fat and made the steward hallucinate bees. You sit down on a stool that creaks ominously. "Where would the rose oil have come from?" you ask. "Persia," Haverford says immediately. "Or maybe Cordoba. The Moors were ahead of us on distillation. They've got fancy stills and gardens full of roses bred just for scent." "Expensive?" He snorts. "Unimaginably. You're squeezing hundreds of petals for a single dram. Only madmen and monarchs bother." You smile. "And me." He peers at you for a long moment. "Yes," he says, "that tracks." He opens a drawer and removes a tiny glass vial, stoppered with wax and labeled, "Do not open while conscious." "This," he says, "is civet." You recoil instinctively. It comes from a gland near a civet cat's back region, he explains cheerfully. Smells foul at first, but age it, blend it with the right florals, and it deepens the whole fragrance. Adds body. Adds cat butt, you mutter. He shrugs. Everything smells odd before refinement. Historians still argue whether medieval perfumers truly appreciated the chemical complexities of their concoctions, or simply followed trial and error. Some say monks developed olfactory charts centuries before chemistry caught up. Others say they were mostly just trying to cover up the scent of cabbage and regret. Either way, you now know your perfume is a global achievement. Persian roses, Moorish techniques, possibly feline funk, all of it funneled into a flask and pressed into your pillow. You thank Haverford, leaving behind a gold coin and a slice of honeyed bread for his trouble, and make your way back through the darkening corridors of your manor. By now, Gerald is asleep in your parlor, clutching a half-melted wax bird and snoring like a man wrestling ghosts. You step over him gently and return to your chamber, and there, of course, is the pillow. Still scented, still divine. You consider writing a poem about it, but your ink has mysteriously disappeared, probably absorbed into the life of some monk somewhere, composing a sonnet about goat cheese. So you settle instead for reading a few lines from your favorite chronicle, the tale of a 9th century countess who demanded cinnamon in her bath water and once tried to pay off raiders with perfume-soaked feathers. Did it work? The manuscript ends mid-sentence. You prefer to think yes. You close the book, stretch, yawn, lie back, and oh, the scent's changed slightly. Just a hint, just enough to notice. Maybe it's the room temperature, maybe it's the hour. But the roses now smell darker, duskier, touched by shadow. The marjoram is more pronounced. The whole thing feels like a garden at night, with fireflies and whispered secrets. You smile. It's like the perfume knows the time. This, of course, sends you into a spiral of thought. What if you could commission time-shifting fragrances? Morning blends with hints of citrus and mint. Noon, all lavender and sage. Dusk, roses and myrrh. Midnight, something cooler, something laced with crushed mint and distant smoke. You'll need more coins, more flasks, more pillows, maybe a scent sommelier, maybe a minor scholar who lives under your staircase and names perfumes after clouds. The possibilities feel endless and slightly ridiculous, and yet, that's the joy of wealth, isn't it? Not the gold, not the land, but the freedom to chase comforts no one else has even imagined yet. You drift into sleep with a smirk on your face and roses in your lungs. The next morning, your pillow smells even better. Somehow, you wake, stretch, sniff, and experience the sort of quiet joy typically reserved for saints and people who find extra pies under the crust. The scent has settled overnight, matured, like wine, or gossip left out in the sun. You roll onto your back and stare at the wooden beams above, imagining your ancestors frowning at you in ghost form. He spends how much on a cushion? But what do they know? They slept on straw sacks and died of toe rot. You're pioneering luxury. You rise, toss on your robe, and summon your steward. Time to schedule a proper public outing with the pillow. You've tested it indoors, in travel, and even in your church pew. But now it's time for the real challenge, the feast. Not a grand ball, mind you, just one of your regular Wednesday revels. Roasted boar, musicians plucking vaguely recognizable tunes, a minor bard reciting tales about shirtless nights. But tonight, your seat will feature a discreet upgrade. The steward blinks when you request a velvet-lined chair with pillow integration. He nods gravely, makes a note, and mutters something about artisans. Hours pass in a flurry of meal planning. You inspect turnips, like you're judging rare gemstones. Approve a custard that wiggles just the right amount. Personally, reposition the tallow candles for atmospheric shimmer. Why? Because the scent demands a worthy stage. And then, at last, dusk. Guests trickle in, lesser nobles, distant cousins, and one particularly strange scholar who insists parsley prevents betrayal. You sit at the head of the table, and beneath you, resting like a secret, the pillow. At first, no one notices. Then Lady Katrin, the one with the elaborate sleeves and constant sneezing, leans in. "Is that roses?" she whispers. You nod solemnly. "My chair is perfumed." She nearly faints. You're not surprised. Scents at medieval feasts are usually less rose garden and more barnyard ambition. Between roasted meats, open fires, and guests who interpret bathing as a metaphor, it's a sensory war zone. Your pillow, however, creates a small, fragrant oasis, an invisible shield of floral dignity. Sir Baldwin, chewing loudly on goose, squints. "Is your chair enchanted?" "Possibly," you reply. Later, when the musicians play a slow tune and the room quiets, several guests lean closer to your seat, nostrils twitching like curious ferrets. You consider charging admission. Somewhere near the dessert course, poached pears and spiced syrup, your cousin Gerald bursts in, late as always, dragging a burlap sack. "I brought time," he yells. No one asks why. You wave him to the side table. There's no time for time. And then, an unexpected twist. The bard steps forward, strumming his lute. "Tonight," he says, "a tale of the perfumed Duke of Aquitaine." You blink. The what? He launches into a story of a 12th century noble who refused to sleep anywhere that didn't smell like violets. Supposedly, he once demanded his army sent their tents before a siege. It did not go well. Bees. Lots of bees. Historians still debate whether the perfumed duke existed at all, or was merely a cautionary tale told by innkeepers to children who overused mint. You decide to believe in him, because why not? There's something deeply soothing in the idea that centuries ago, someone else obsessed over fragrance and fabrics and floral notes. You picture the perfumed duke riding into battle with scented pennants and a lavender-stuffed saddle. "Fabulous," you murmur, raising your cup in silent toast. The feast winds down. Guests stumble home, full and mildly confused. One knight tries to pocket a candle. You pretend not to notice. Back in your chambers, you remove the pillow and set it beside the window. Let it air. Let it bask. You wonder suddenly how long the scent will last. Will it fade in a week? A month? Will it age into something melancholy and beautiful, like old parchment? Or just turn into damp rose, and then suspicious sock? No one ever talks about the afterlife of perfume. You decide to find out. Tomorrow, you'll begin a pillow journal. Track the evolution. Write down each nuance. Chart the shifts by moon phase and mood. It'll be your quiet legacy, a scented chronicle. You pull on your nightshirt, settle into bed, and whisper a small vow. "I will not let this pillow be forgotten." The first entry in your Pillow Fragrance Log Volume 1 reads, Day 4, scent profile mellowed. Rose still present, but hints of warm spice emerging. Possibly nutmeg. Or is that just Gerald's socks? You seal it with wax and return the little scroll to your bedside box, where it joins an odd collection of items. Dried lavender sprigs, a tiny spoon made from antler, and an ominous feather you suspect came from a priest's hat. Outside, the manor stirs with its usual morning sounds, clanking armor, chickens muttering philosophical doubts, and your steward arguing with the butter churn. But you remain in bed a little longer, basking in the scent like a spoiled cat. This morning, it feels especially layered, like a choir of flowers instead of just one soloing rose. You detect a subtle resin note now, perhaps frankincense, or the ghost of it. Hard to say. Down in the kitchens, news is spreading. The cook's assistant claims he got a whiff of your pillow when passing your chamber door, and now believes it cured his hiccups. The scullery maid says it made her dream of lemon trees. Gerald, naturally, is trying to replicate it using goose grease and parsley. You decide it's time for more answers. Not from your apothecary this time. From the source. So you send a messenger to the nearby town, summoning a perfumer, ideally one not covered in soot or bird bones. By late afternoon, a cart arrives carrying Mistress Allais, an older woman wrapped in scarves and mystery. She smells faintly of cardamom and judgment. She bows low. You summoned a nose? You nod gravely and present the pillow like it's a royal relic. She sniffs, pauses, sniffs again, then closes her eyes and mutters something in Occitan. What is it? You ask. Genoese base, she says, but the blend is Moorish, Turkish rose, clove, a trace of ambergris. You blink. From Wales? From the sea, she says, like that explains everything. Collected by fishermen, floats like stone, smells like heaven after aging. You nod slowly. So, whale barf. Sacred whale barf, she corrects. She spends an hour gently prodding the pillow, murmuring things like, yes, yes, layered dry down, and, ah, a whisper of benzoin. You sit quietly, trying not to sneeze. Eventually, she turns to you with the expression of someone delivering difficult news. This fragrance, she says, was designed not just to smell pleasing, but to evoke longing. You raise an eyebrow. For what? She smiles faintly. That is the mystery. For a garden that no longer exists, a lover never met, a summer lost in childhood. You blink. That's a lot for a pillow. Historians still argue whether medieval perfumes were purely for masking odors or whether some were deliberately alchemical, designed to alter mood, memory, even behavior. There's talk of scented talismans, of monks using lavender to quiet demons, of queens dabbing perfume on letters to sway foreign kings. Mistress Allais stands. I can replicate this, she says, but only once. These notes were aged together. Each bottle may shift slightly. You agree, of course. Commission 3 flasks at once and hand her a coin pouch heavy enough to pay a cathedral's candle budget. As she departs, she turns back and adds, keep it out of direct sun. And don't let any monks bless it. Why not? They'll ruin the top notes. You make a note in your journal. Day 5. Consulted expert. Fragrance may contain longing, possibly spiritual. No monk access. Later that evening, you find yourself oddly contemplative. The pillow still smells divine, but now you think you understand why. It's not just the ingredients, it's the story, the geography trapped in oil, the trade routes and spice caravans and whale things that had to happen just for this moment. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the scent carry you. For a second, you're not in your chamber at all. You're under a fig tree in Andalusia. A warm breeze carries the scent of crushed roses. Someone nearby is singing softly in a language you don't quite understand, and there are lemons the size of melons. It's not memory, but it feels real. And then Gerald shouts through the door, "The goose has eaten the time experiment." The spell breaks. But that's okay. You've got it bottled now. You don't tell many people this, but you're starting to think the pillow is changing. Not in a sinister, enchanted object way. It hasn't started whispering secrets or levitating. No one's burst into flames. It's just evolving. Day 6, and the scent seems deeper somehow. More introspective, less eager to please, and more like an old philosopher, nodding slowly at your problems. You lean in and inhale. Now there's a soft note of something resinous, maybe myrrh, maybe cedar. It reminds you of church on a feast day, minus the stiff shoes and cold pews. Naturally, you record it. Day 6. Notes now include contemplative tree bark and possibly regretful cinnamon. Your steward peers over your shoulder as you write. "Is this a new accounting ledger?" he asks hopefully. "Of a kind," you reply. Word is spreading. Your perfumed pillow is now the subject of serious gossip. At market today, you overheard 2 millers arguing whether you were afflicted by aromatic madness. One claimed he once smelled his wife's hair so fondly he forgot to pay taxes for 3 years. You're oddly flattered. But today's goal is simple. Extend the pillow's lifespan. That means maintenance. You start by gently shaking it in the sun-dappled courtyard, careful to follow Mistress Allace's advice. Not direct sun, just filtered sun. The kind of light that politely knocks first. Next comes the linen wrap. A fresh layer of fine cloth, lightly dabbed with oil from your new emergency vial of replica scent. You use only a drop. You whisper apologies to the rose. It's a sacred process now. A curious stable boy walks by, sniffs, and stops in his tracks. "Is that the bishop's garden?" You shake your head. "Better." He bows awkwardly and flees. As you return indoors, you spot your household cat curled up on the pillow. She looks smug, blessed, as if she's just remembered being worshipped in Egypt and is reliving the glory. You let her be. For now. That evening, you test the pillow's endurance in a more social setting, a poetry circle. You host these once a month, partly for reputation, mostly for the absurdity. Tonight's theme: love, loss, and pickled fish. Guests arrive bearing lyres, scrolls, and inexplicable shawls. One nobleman wears a crown made of quince. You take your usual seat on the tapestry bench, pillow discreetly behind you. No one comments at first. Then someone sniffs, and the flood begins. Poets are uniquely sensitive creatures. They pick up on fragrances like falcons spotting mice in the dark. Within minutes, they're whispering odes to invisible gardens and arguing over whether the scent feels more melancholy or seductive with a hint of drizzle. You don't interrupt. But when Lady Catherine rises to read her latest sonnet and begins crying halfway through the 3rd stanza, muttering, "It's just so floral," you begin to suspect the pillow may now possess emotional leverage. Historians still argue whether medieval sensory experiences could reach the level of spiritual transformation. Some claim relics had smells that inspired trances. Others say kings judged advisors based on the aroma of their cloaks. All you know is this. After the poetry circle ends, every guest lingers just a little too long near your chair. You assign guards to the pillow that night. Just in case, in the quiet hours before bed, you reflect on how something so small, just a square of stuffed linen and a few drops of oil, has restructured your entire household. The servants walk more carefully near your chamber. Gerald has started sleeping with a bundle of herbs for balance. The cat refuses all other bedding. And you? you feel oddly grounded, as if in focusing on something so ephemeral, you've pulled your scattered medieval life into sharper, simpler harmony. You drift to sleep surrounded by the pillow's evolving perfume, half rose, half memory, all yours. In the morning, the pillow is gone, not misplaced, not accidentally sat on by Gerald. Gone. You sit up in bed with a terrible certainty. You can feel its absence like a missing tooth. You check the usual spots, under the bed, behind the curtain, in the cat's latest thrown pile. Nothing. You try to stay calm. After all, you're a respected member of the minor nobility, a community pillar, a person who owns 3 cloaks, just for weather that might involve soup. You can handle this, but your hands are already trembling as you ring the summoning bell. The steward bursts in a moment later. He sees your face and immediately straightens. Has there been a goat? No, you say, voice low. Something far worse. The pillow is gone. There's a silence. Then, mobilize the kitchen. He bows and dashes off. Within half an hour, the entire household is under search protocol. The cook is interrogating the meat boy. The stable hands are upturning hay bales. The cat is being suspiciously quiet. You even search Gerald's room, just in case. You find several jars of experimental condiments, an unfinished sonnet about parsley, and a suspicious number of pilfered candles. But no pillow. It's near sunset when the steward returns, pale and dust-covered. There's a note, he says, handing you a scrap of parchment. You read it aloud. Apologies. The pillow is in safe hands. It deserves more than one bottom. A. You sit back slowly. Allez. Of course. You try not to panic. Stealing a noble's scented pillow is an audacious move, even by perfumer standards. But you recall her words. It evokes longing. Perhaps it evoked her longing. Still, you're not without resources. You dispatch a falcon letter. Well, a pigeon. Falcons are expensive and bite, requesting an urgent audience. You keep the wording polite, but the subtext reads, "Return my fluffy masterpiece or I will weep dramatically until the crops fail." The response arrives the next day. Come, alone. Bring your nose. That's it. So you go. You ride out at dawn, wrapped in a travel cloak and mild irritation. The road is long, cobbled, and smells like horse. Not ideal. But eventually, you arrive at her apothecary tucked on the edge of town. Part garden, part greenhouse, part mystery library. She greets you with a nod. You came. Where is it? Ale says nothing, just beckons you inside. The air is thick with scent. Orange blossom, beeswax, basil, and something faintly smoky. You follow her through several rooms, each more fragrant than the last. In one, dried herbs hang like upside-down bats. In another, little glass bottles glint like treasure. And then you see it. The pillow. Resting on a carved wooden pedestal, beneath a gauzy silk veil, like a relic, like a saint's femur. You approach reverently, then pause. It smells different. Still rose, yes, but richer, earthier, a note of something unfamiliar. You look at her. I modified it, she says. A final layer. The base was unfinished. Historians still argue whether medieval artisans considered their works ever truly complete. Cathedrals were built over generations. Tapestries had entire threads redone after decades. And perfumers, especially the serious ones, believe that scents should evolve like stories. You sniff again. The new note is grounding, like a memory you can't place but know you miss. Not sadness, just softness. I shouldn't have taken it, Ale admits, but it deserved the last touch. You nod, eyes still closed, and then you say, without thinking, "What's the ingredient?" She grins. "Dried pear skin." You open one eye. That's oddly perfect. "It's the note of nostalgia," she says. You pick up the pillow. It's warm from the sun that filters in through colored glass. You hold it against your chest like a returning friend. It's both exactly the same and somehow better. "Thank you," you whisper. Outside, you mount your horse and begin the ride home, the pillow safely tucked into your saddlebag. The wind smells of coming rain, and the sky is a soft gray. Everything feels balanced. Your home waits ahead. Gerald's probably boiling socks. The cat's likely usurped your pillow throne again, but it doesn't matter. The pillow has returned. The scent lingers, folds around you like a second cloak. You breathe it in and ride on. You arrive home just in time to catch Gerald presenting a lecture, unsolicited, of course, to the entire kitchen staff. And when I say the marjoram must be steeped in brine before the fennel infusion, I mean it as a friend, not a tyrant, he insists, waving a ladle. Everyone looks both bewildered and emotionally resigned. You clear your throat from the doorway. The room stills. Then a gasp. The pillow. You cradle it in both hands like a sacred pastry. It is, after all, the most luxurious, carefully layered, debatably alchemical, mildly kidnapped pillow in the entire county. There is silence. Then, spontaneous applause, followed by a few servants claiming to just need a little whiff. You hold it high above reach. There will be no more peasant nose prints on your sacred relic. That evening, you return it to its rightful place. Your bed, fluffed, layered, and arranged with the gravity of a crown jewel. The cat resumes her watchful post nearby. You note she's brought a dead mouse offering, which you politely remove. The pillow is still evolving. That final note, dried pear skin, has brought an unexpected roundness to the fragrance, something almost edible, comforting. A memory of fruit on a summer table, sunlight on your fingers, the pips sticky between your teeth. You lie back and breathe deeply. That night, your dreams are vivid. You're walking through a strange garden, not one you've ever seen in waking life, but unmistakably familiar. The flowers are enormous, plump and overripe. The air smells like poetry and warm bread. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs softly. Not mockingly, gently. You don't turn around. When you wake, you feel rested in a way that borders on suspicious, as if your soul has had a spa day. Day 8, you write. The pillow may now contain dreams, or pears, or both. After breakfast, you decide it's time to protect your investment. You call for the steward. "I want it insured." He blinks. "Insured?" "Yes, like a relic, or a very good soup recipe, or my ankles." He clears his throat. "Against what exactly?" "Theft, fire, Gerald-related accidents, over-enthusiastic pilgrims." He doesn't even question that last one. That's growth. So he draws up a charter, your Fragrant Possession Protection Pact. It includes a rotating guard schedule, light-duty soldiers only, no garlic, a no-sniffing clause, and a new velvet box to store it during storms. You also install a discreet scent bell near your bed. It rings only when the aroma shifts, something you invented in collaboration with the local bell maker, who had too much time and too many small hammers. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval nobles went to protect their personal luxuries. We know of jewel-locking prayer books, gold-threaded glove satchels, even cloaks sewn with tiny bells to deter sneaky fingers. But a fragrance protocol? That might be a first. Your pillow becomes legend. Merchants stop by, hoping to purchase a whiff. One offers a goose, another a recipe for flavorless marmalade, which you refuse out of principle. A local monk asks to smell it for spiritual calibration. You decline, gently citing the ambergris. And yet, your favorite visitor is a young girl from the village. She stands by your gate one morning, clutching a flower and a note written in careful, shaky letters. "Can I smell the pillow, please? I have been sad and I like roses." You invite her in. She doesn't speak much, just kneels beside your bed, sniffs once, smiles so wide it seems to echo, and says, "That's exactly what I imagined clouds would smell like." She leaves humming. You sit in silence for a long while after that. Maybe, just maybe, you think, the pillow isn't just a scented object. Maybe it's a portal, not magical in the sorcery sense, but in the far more dangerous way of giving people something to feel again, to remember gardens they never visited, to miss someone they never met. You look at the pillow. It doesn't answer, but it smells perfect. By the 9th night, your pillow has gained the social status of a minor noble. It dines with you. Well, not literally, but you do set it near your chair during meals, wrapped in velvet, carefully placed so it can listen in. Gerald insists on toasting it during supper, raising his goblet solemnly and saying, "To our scented sovereign." You don't stop him. Truth be told, things have grown a bit elaborate. You now have a designated pillow servant, a quiet boy named Mikkel, whose sole duty is to rotate the pillow every few hours to maintain even scent distribution. He takes his role seriously. He started wearing gloves made of kid leather soaked in lavender water. At first, you thought he was showing off. But you must admit, the results are impressive. And then, one rainy evening, the bishop arrives. Not a letter, not a summons. The actual bishop. He comes cloaked in storm-damp wool, a ringed hand outstretched, and a mysterious glint in his eye. "I've come," he says, "to smell the relic." You pause. You hadn't realized word had reached the church. "It's a pillow," you offer hesitantly. He nods. So was the stone Jacob rested on, and now it's in half the Psalms. You decide not to argue. You lead him to the chamber. The pillow rests as usual on its plump throne of stacked linen, ringed with small sachets and guarded by the cat, who has taken to hissing at anyone she finds unworthy. The bishop approaches solemnly, bows once, and leans in. He inhales. Long pause, then, "My God." You wait. He straightens slowly. "It is what I always imagined heaven would smell like, if heaven had a herb garden and a fondness for candied fruit." He wipes a tear. Gerald later swears the bishop attempted to pocket a sachet. You choose not to investigate. That night, your dreams return. This time, you're back in the strange garden. But now there's music, lutes, softly plucked, and the sound of honey dripping. You follow a trail of rose petals. It leads to a long table covered in silk and pears and pastries shaped like animals. At the head sits the pillow. You don't question it. You wake feeling oddly blessed. Historians still debate the role of scent in medieval religious life. We know that incense was key in ceremonies, and that relics were often chosen as much for their aroma as their supposed miracles. There are even whispered accounts of saints whose tombs exuded sweet fragrances for centuries. You suspect your pillow would be canonized by now, if not for its terribly secular beginnings. The household adapts. Morning greetings are replaced by, "Has it changed today?" Visitors bring offerings, dried fruits, pressed flowers, even poetry. One particularly passionate apprentice offers you a haiku: "Rose and pear and peace, resting head on cloud of silk, heaven in a puff." You frame it. But one evening, something odd happens. You lean down to inhale, as you've done every night since day one. And it's fainter. Still there, yes, still beautiful, but softer, distant, like a song you loved as a child but haven't heard in years. You inhale again. Same. You don't panic. Not at first. Perhaps it's the weather, or your nose, or Mikkel forgot his rotation schedule. But the feeling lingers. That quiet suspicion that, like all beautiful things, the fragrance is fading. You keep this to yourself. You go about your evening as usual, a light supper, an argument with Gerald about bean storage, a brief soliloquy to the cat about the nature of decay. But you sleep restlessly. You dream of a pillow slowly drifting down a river, fragrant but distant, as 1,000 roses nod goodbye from the banks. Morning breaks through your chamber like a half-hearted apology. Gray light, damp walls, and the faint scent of melancholy, or possibly overripe turnips from the market below. You rise slowly, rubbing your face, and glance toward the pillow. Still elegant, still perfectly fluffed, but undeniably quieter. You approach like one might approach an old friend in the middle of a difficult confession. You lift it gently, breathe in, and yes, definitely softer, fainter. The richness has become a whisper. The rose, once assertive, now peeks out timidly, like a shy guest at a royal banquet. Panic begins its slow creep. You summon Mikkel with a single bell ring. He arrives promptly, gloved and slightly out of breath. "You've been rotating it?" He nods solemnly. Even added a rosemary sachet to the southern edge for balance. You nod absently. Rosemary, the herb of memory. Irony noted. Gerald arrives next, brandishing a wooden spoon and a dubious explanation about how humidity could absolutely diminish aromatic payload. You suspect he's just trying to sound important. He ends the theory with a shrug and the suggestion, "We could just make another one." You fix him with a stare so sharp it could slice garlic. "That pillow," you say slowly, "is not a recipe." And it's true. You could commission another blend. Alay would oblige, perhaps even refine it further. But it wouldn't be this one. This scent was a moment in time, born of rain on market day, pear skins and whispers, Alay's odd humor and your sheer stubbornness. It was a one-time poem bottled in linen. Historians still argue whether scent was truly considered an art in the Middle Ages, or simply a practical affair. Certainly, perfumers were skilled and richly patronized, but rarely seen as artists in the grand sense. And yet, you wonder, isn't that what art is? Something fleeting, beautiful, and slightly unnecessary? You decide to write to Alay. Not a request, just a thank you. You tell her that the blend was perfect, that it made you dream of strange gardens and forgotten songs, that it startled a bishop into almost converting to rose worship. You add, if it fades, it fades. But thank you for the time it sang. You send it by pigeon. 2 days later, a reply returns. Only 3 words. It was alive. You sit with that for a while. Alive. You begin to notice small things. The way the fabric now smells faintly of your own dreams. The way the pear note clings just a little longer in your chamber each morning. The way the cat seems to spend more time curled beside it, as if listening. The scent is fading, yes, but not disappearing. It's evolving again, melancholy now, wistful, like autumn wind through an orchard long after the harvest. You start sleeping with it clutched close, no longer out of preciousness, but because it comforts you. The pillow doesn't just smell like perfume anymore. It smells like your life, tea and parchment, laughter and regret, the echo of tiny revolutions like deciding soup can, in fact, be eaten from a goblet. One night, you dream not of gardens, but of Alay's apothecary. You walk among jars and vials, and the pillow floats behind you like a cloud on a leash. You open one bottle, labeled simply, Silence, and it smells exactly like the last note in a lullaby. You wake and realize the scent isn't fading. You're changing. Where once you sought richness, now you crave softness. Where once you measured value by intensity, now you measure it by feeling. The pillow isn't dying. It's just become a part of you. Later that week, you host a feast. Just a quiet one. Vegetables, soft cheeses, and wine that tastes faintly like toasted walnuts. You place the pillow at the head of the table. No one questions it. Alay attends. She leans in close and whispers, "It's aged well." "So have I," you reply, though your hairline might disagree. She gives you a small satchel before leaving. "Don't open it yet," she says. "Wait for the first frost." You nod. Later, you press it to your chest and breathe in the faintest note of something new. Cardamom and... was that beeswax? You smile. Your pillow may fade, but it's still alive. The first frost comes quietly. It tiptoes into the village under a pale moon, wrapping roofs in white lace and silencing the usual morning clatter of carts and hooves. You wake to breath visible in the air and the realization that your chamber has become an accidental icebox. You do what any sensible medieval millionaire would. Pull the covers over your head and demand a heated brick from the nearest footman. Then you remember the satchel, still sealed, still resting on your nightstand beside a tiny clay piglet. A gift from Gerald, who insists it wards off pillow curses. You unwrap the string gently, as if opening a letter from an old lover. Inside is a small packet of herbs and a parchment note. Winter blend, for layering dreams upon dreams. Gently warm near the fire. Let breathe before sleeping. Love, you hold it to your nose. The scent is richer, thicker than your original blend. Cinnamon bark, orange rind, a whisper of smoke, something that smells uncannily like almond marzipan and fireplace tales. You could swear you hear sleigh bells somewhere off in your memory. You lay the packet on the hearthstone to warm, then, with reverent hands, tuck it into the inner fold of your fading pillow. The transformation is subtle, but immediate. The pillow doesn't just smell like winter, it feels like it. Crackling fires, mulled wine, the thick hush of snowfall on slate. A scent that tells you, sleep now, the world can wait. Gerald barges in mid-sniff. I made chestnut pudding, he announces proudly. Also, I accidentally set the towel room on fire, but mainly the pudding. You nod slowly. You smell like regret and scorched linen. That's how you know it's authentic, he says, grinning. You spend that evening curled beside the fire, pillow cradled in your lap like a cherished pet. The cat tries to lie on it, of course, but you slide her off gently. This is my moment, you whisper. She glares, then commandeers your slipper instead. Outside, the world ices over. Inside, your chamber smells like a celebration you didn't know you needed. Historians still argue whether seasonal scent rituals were common in medieval households. There's strong evidence that nobles refreshed linens with seasonal herbs, lavender in summer, sage and cloves in winter, but few written records describe the sensory richness you now enjoy. You fall asleep that night to the scent of toasting spices and snow-dusted wood. Your dreams return once more. You're back in the garden, but it's winter now. The petals are gone, replaced with glassy frost on evergreen leaves. The pillow floats beside you, swaddled in velvet. In the distance, a fire crackles, and a voice says, "Rest. The work of remembering is done." When you wake, there's a sense of closure. Not sadness, just quiet satisfaction. You rise, stretch, and open your window. The village is cloaked in white, and from somewhere far below, a child's voice rings out, "It smells like pie." You smile. Your pillow's legend continues. Later that day, you find Mikkel asleep beside the fireplace, your pillow cradled like a holy relic. You pause, ready to scold, but then you see the smile on his face, a gentle, contented curve. You let him sleep. You light a candle, settle into your armchair, and write one last note in the ledger you've been keeping. Day 30. I have spent all 30 coins. I have a pillow that smells like dreams, and I think, yes, I would do it all again. Snow deepens. The rooftops take on thatched hats of white, and chimneys smoke like sleepy giants murmuring into the cold. Your mansion feels quieter, muffled by the season and the weight of time. Even Gerald has toned things down. His most recent excitement involved finding a carrot shaped vaguely like a bishop. The pillow, meanwhile, has matured into something ceremonial. It's no longer merely the scented object. It's a fixture, a tradition, part relic, part bedtime ritual. Each night, you perform the routine, a light airing by the fire, a gentle fluffing with gloved hands, and then a long, appreciative inhale before lying down beside it. You speak to it now in soft murmurs, little nothings, gratitudes. Thank you for staying. You smell like poems tonight. Please don't absorb Gerald's onion stew scent. One evening, you receive a visitor, a traveling minstrel, young, a little frostbitten, carrying a harp that's seen better centuries. I've heard, she says, that you have the pillow that sings dreams. You pause. Well, not literally sings. She bows. May I smell it? You nod, gesturing her in. She kneels beside it with reverence. Her eyes widen. It smells like my grandmother's attic, and cinnamon, and... She trails off, then quietly asks, "Can I write a song about it?" You smile. If you don't, the pillow might get offended. She stays the night, sleeping beside the hearth on a borrowed quilt. In the morning, she leaves a scrap of parchment behind. O pillow, prince of linen realm, thy fragrance guides my dreams to helm. With rose and pear and spice imbued, thy scent outlasts my nightly feud. You add it to the collection. Historians still argue whether personal objects, pillows, linens, combs, held emotional value in medieval noble households. In inventories, they appear frequently, often richly described, occasionally bequeathed to heirs. But were they loved, or just valued? You know your answer. Weeks pass. You've stopped expecting the scent to stay the same. Instead, you've begun appreciating its shifts, how one night it leans more pear, the next more clove. It's like listening to a choir where the soloist changes with the moon. Even the cat seems gentler with it now, curling beside it without needing, purring softly like she, too, has accepted its place as family. One night, you host a small winter salon, candles lit low, guests in layers of velvet and fur, wine steeped with figs and cardamom. And instead of showing off your wealth, or your imported salt sculptures, or Gerald's regrettable lute solo, you simply pass around the pillow. No one laughs. Each guest breathes in deeply, then grows quiet. One elderly guest, Lady Elizabeth, famed for her sarcasm and aggressive embroidery, smiles faintly and whispers, "It reminds me of my wedding night, but in a good way." Everyone nods. In that moment, the pillow becomes not yours, but everyone's. You realize you've spent your wealth on something that can't be hoarded: memory. That night, you press your face into it and inhale deeply. It smells like warmth, and like time. The last morning of your 30-day scent adventure arrives under pale skies, and a hush so complete, it feels like the world is holding its breath. You wake slowly, less out of necessity, more out of ritual now. Before your feet touch the floor, your hand moves instinctively toward the pillow, pulling it close, pressing your face gently into its center. The scent is still there, soft as the space between heartbeats. Fainter than it was, yes, but deeper somehow. It has aged into something mellow and wise. You take a long inhale. It smells like the journey. Gerald bursts in with what he calls breakfast innovation, a toasted oat slab wrapped around a roasted pear core. You call it a warm brick with ambition. He beams anyway. Meikle enters more gently, carrying your daily ledger. He's noticed you don't write much anymore. Would you like me to take dictation? You shake your head. Not today. Instead, you stand, robes loose, hair mildly chaotic, and you pick up the pillow. Just hold it for a while. No ceremony, no speech. But something's changed. You walk the halls of your home with it tucked under your arm like a royal standard. Every creaky floorboard, every chilly stone corridor feels a bit less austere. The pillow has transformed from an indulgence into a talisman. Downstairs, the fire crackles. The cat yawns at your feet. You sit quietly and reflect. You remember the market, the velvet bag of coins, Alay's gloved hands. You remember testing scent samples while trying not to sneeze in a dignified manner. You remember the first night when the pillow smelled like orchards in heaven. And now, It smells like home. Historians still debate whether luxury in the Middle Ages was more about showing off or soothing the soul. Were gold-threaded tapestries and gemstone-handled spoons meant to impress neighbors or comfort their owners? Your 30-coin pillow answered that. It soothed. It anchored. It invited laughter, reflection, even poetry. It held the weight of memory. And you think? Maybe that was the real point all along. You make one final note in your ledger. Final day. Pillow still sings. Quieter, yes, but true. Worth every coin. Note to self. Scent cannot be stored, only savored. Also, never let Gerald make oat burritos again. That night, you prepare for sleep more slowly than usual. You air the pillow one last time. You warm it beside the hearth. You fluff it with reverence, not habit. And then, you lie down. You close your eyes. And the scent that surrounds you is no longer just rose or pear or spice. It's you. Your choices. Your memories. Your little adventure in luxury, absurdity, and subtle transformation. The scent doesn't lull you to sleep. It welcomes you there. And as your breathing slows and the fire dwindles to glowing coals, the last thing you remember is how perfectly it cradles your head. Not too soft, not too proud, just enough to carry your dreams. And now, you've reached the end of your journey, wrapped in the softness of silk-threaded linens and the ghost of a perfume you'll always remember, even if you never quite smell it the same way again. The candle gutter's low now. The halls of your manor are quiet. Gerald's lute, blessedly, is put away, and even the cat has curled into a silent spiral of fur beside your slippers. The pillow rests beneath you, having carried you, not just through nights of sleep, but through days of wonder, laughter, and a kind of peace you hadn't expected to buy with mere coins. The scent is softer now, but so are you. Your body sinks further into stillness, your breaths lengthen, and the thoughts that once swirled like leaves on the wind have begun to drift downward, like snow settling on untouched stone. It's okay if you don't remember everything from tonight. You were there. You felt it. You followed every odd twist, every perfumed moment. And now all that's left is the quiet contentment that lives in the spaces between dreams. So breathe in once more, gently. Let the last of the pear and rose and firewood fill your lungs. Let your shoulders drop just a little deeper into the mattress. Let your fingers grow still. You've done enough. You've spent the coins. You've scented the silence. And now it's time to rest. Good night.